Are you totally different when it comes to sex and copulation? Have you judged yourself out of receiving pleasure? Have you judged yourself into receiving pleasure in certain ways and excluded other ways? Would you like to know more about what else is possible with bodies? Would you like to create confidence in the bedroom and beyond? How has your sex life or lack of it affected other areas of your life? Everyone has the potency to be a sexual superhero. Get ready to listen, sense, and play with the sexualness that is you. Now, here's the host of The Pleasure Zone, pleasure diva and body whisperer, Milica Jelenic.
Well, hello, sweet pleasure seekers. Welcome to The Pleasure Zone. Guess what? If you landed here by accident, it wasn't really an accident because you're on the pleasure zone. So something in your body directed you to this wild and zany show that I have that has over 220 episodes in the podcast. It's crazy. It's just crazy how much information is out there that I've even put out there, but how much information is out there in the world. It's just crazy. So tonight I have a guest, and she's awesome, and I'm so excited to have her on. She's been on before, but she could come on whenever she likes because she's a riot. And so tonight we actually have a great topic, pleasure leads to profit. And I love this topic because I've worked with people with this topic before in different ways, and I love to hear how other people utilize pleasure to generate and to actually lead to profit. So it's always so fun to for me to hear other insights from other people, what they're aware of, what practices they've chosen and created in their lives to have that show up. So Gaia, her name is actually Gaia Morrissette, not Alana Morissette, but Gaia Morrissette. She's a renowned international speaker, trainer, facilitator, and coach who generally makes the world happier just showing up smiling. She shows up on Facebook regularly, actually, so you can find her on Facebook doing lives, sharing fabulous information. She offers a safer and sexier place for all of us. It really, truly does. And super great topics that you cover, I have to say, Gaia. So Gaia believes that the key to happy, healthy, wealthy, magical, and epic orgasmic life is sexual wellness, embracing the human experience and releasing fear, shame, guilt, and self-loathing. Some pretty big things. Gaia supports people living with more pleasure through holistic sexual wellness, trauma recovery, and divine sexual and elemental magics. I know even as you listen to her bio, doesn't your body just get so turned on and excited that there's somebody in the world who does all of this? She's a holistic sexual wellness and BDSM wellness specialist. Her philosophy is that for true sexual wellness to happen, you must look at these 5 aspects: play, sensuality, sexuality, exploration, and sacred. Her published book, Stop, Drop, and Wiggle, explores the first aspect, which is our foundation of happiness, play. Gaia is the founder of succulentliving.com, so check that out, and divinealchemy.guru. Her education and training consists of sexology, trauma recovery, take a deep breath, life coaching, tantra training, sex coaching, and lots of practice in the areas of play, healing, and exploring. I have to say that if I were 22 listening to your bio, Gaia, it would be such an inspiration for me to know that these possibilities exist in the world, that to even be able to to have this role in the world. I didn't really even think that people like you existed when I was in my early 20s. I saw Sex with Sue, but I didn't really know beyond that who else was teaching. I was aware of Tantra, but I wasn't aware of the scope of what's available or even what's been created in the last 25 years. So to me, it's super exciting what is coming out and, especially what you offer. And I'm so glad to have you on this show, having this conversation about pleasure leading to profit. So what does that title mean to you? You were so excited to share the title with me that I'm curious about some of your personal experiences with that. But first, to look at what is pleasure leading to profit. What's the idea behind that?
So I'm super excited to share this because I've had this huge transformation over the last 2.5 years about I teach pleasure. That's my jam, right? It's all about different aspects of pleasure and how we move with pleasure. And what I was seeing happening with all of my entrepreneur clients that were seeing me was these like extreme transformations in their business. Money, success, growth. It was incredible watching it. So I was like, maybe I think there's something here. So it's like, okay, so I practice pleasure, and I practice ethical pleasure seeking is kind of my daily practice of how I move in the world. And I was like, what if I took those practices and dropped them into a business model of how I actually run my day-to-day business? And so I started to see these incredible things that were happening in my own business. That my revenue was doubled in the first year, and then it doubled again in the second year, and it's it's already I'm already making more money this year already, and it's like, and I'm joyful while I am working. So it's not just, which is amazing. It's like I'm super busy. I'm super busy doing, building my empire of making the world a sexier place for us all, and all these great programs and things that I'm doing. And I'm not getting less busy. I'm getting more busy. Yet I'm having more joy, more pleasure, making more money, and I have more energy. And so, and my health's improving. And so all these like incredible things have happened when I've shifted out of the traditional sort of business model where we write lists and where, it's very goal oriented, to moving more into being in the flow and moving in a place of pleasure, and how each pleasure moment, or I call it pleasure type, each one of them has different frequencies, and when you can learn to harness those frequencies for a particular goal, how that actually works out. So yeah, I'm super excited about this because I'm just loving it. I'm loving watching it happen every day in my own life, and then watching it, the benefits that are happening with all the entrepreneurs that I'm working with. And I've created some really juicy stuff for people to kind of lean into these concepts and move in a pleasure business model.
I love it. So you mentioned that there are pleasure types. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there's 4 pleasure types. There's sensory pleasure, emotional pleasure, orgasmic pleasure, and then the 4th one is chemically induced pleasure.
Okay. Sensory pleasure, emotional pleasure, and so chemically induced would be like drugs, for example?
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, can you tell us a little bit about each one, like sensory pleasure? Can you tell us a little bit about what that is to you?
Okay, so sensory pleasure is about engaging in all of our 5 senses and allowing those sensory data that's becoming a part of our day-to-day life. We're always taking in data and allowing that data to drop into the pleasure of it. And so, an example of that would be, fully engaging in smell or sight or taste or touch or hearing. And what happens is that all day long, we have all these sensory pleasure moments that we miss, like drinking our coffee in the morning, having a shower. Like, we're missing all of these pleasure moments because we don't feel that we're worthy. We're too busy. We're in autopilot. We're not in our bodies, all those kind of things. So that's what sensory pleasure is.
I like it. I like that description. Is this actually something that you kind of developed in your own discovery? Is this something that you found through different trainings, or something you've compiled, or is this something that's truly like this? I've personally not heard the 4 descriptions of pleasure before, so I'm wondering, is this like all you, girl?
Yeah.
I freaking love it. So there's a book coming out about this, right? Like, this is awesome.
Yeah, eventually I imagine a book will be coming out about this. Basically what started to happen is actually how the 4 how the 4 types of pleasure came about was because I've been doing so much work about, sexuality, and what I was finding is that I want to swing from the chandeliers and teach people how to have, give good blowjobs and all this like great fun stuff about, sacred sexuality and stuff. And people were like, but they couldn't get there because they couldn't allow themselves to really just understand pleasure and to drop into pleasure and feel safe in pleasure. And so I was like, oh, shit. Okay, well, I can't teach you how to be epic in bed if you can't just even allow yourself to be in your body. Never mind, like, being able to, get freaky, right? Like, that's just not going to happen. True. And so I was like, okay, how do I teach people about pleasure in a way that's manageable for people? And so that's where the 4 pleasure types came from, was that I was like, okay, I got to figure out a way in which I could break it down for people.
I love it.
So this came from, that's where that came from, is the realization that we had to go back to the foundation, which is just the basic pleasure part.
Those pleasure parts. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. For sure. I've broken it down before, but I often look at it as different ways that we try to create it. And I just love that you've broken it down into some like very basic categories. Like, so emotional pleasure. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so emotional pleasure is where, so it's like, think of a moment where the emotions and the thoughts are just so like explosive. Like you're just so happy. You're so excited. You're so excited that you just want to wiggle your butt, like you just can't help yourself, or you want to squeal, like these are these emotional pleasure moments. So an example would be maybe watching a sunset, and feeling overwhelmed with the emotions that come with what you're taking in on the sensory side. Winning a trip. You're spending time with a friend that you haven't seen in forever. And when we have those emotional release, it basically becomes like this pleasure release that happens in our body. And there's all these great, both with sensory pleasure and with emotional pleasure, there's biochemicals being released into your body. And those biochemicals are doing like awesome things for how you sensory and how your body is feeling, but also how you're emotionally feeling and what your automatic response of your nervous system is doing and your, health. And there's all these great benefits to it. So that's what emotional pleasure is. But it's basically the thoughts and the emotions that come, and your body just has to explode with pleasure.
I love it. With pleasure and probably come too sometimes.
Yeah.
That's
which leads us to with a happy side effect, which leads us into orgasmic pleasure.
Yes, let's talk about that, orgasmic pleasure.
So orgasmic pleasure is where it's either sensory pleasure and then it just keeps building until you need to actually, your body has like an orgasmic release because there's just so much pleasure and it needs to explode. Same with emotional pleasure, or it usually could be a combination of sensory pleasure and emotional pleasure that's just building, and it's your body's response to so much pleasure that it just has it's a happy byproduct, which is this orgasmic release. And that orgasmic release can be in many different capacities, not just on a genital level, but also on, energetically, and your whole body can start to vibrate, and you can have orgasmic releases all over your body, not just genitally focused. So that's what orgasmic pleasure moments are.
I love that. Yeah, I'm becoming more and more aware of how it's not really a common thing for people to have like full body orgasms, where it kind of surprises me every once in a while when I hear people anywhere over 25 not being aware of the concept or having had experienced full body orgasms, and then my body's like, oh, well, that's something that I can contribute to the planet because, man, everybody could use that. That's just beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
I love that, yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about what the chemically induced pleasure would be?
So chemically induced pleasure would be taking some kind of pharmaceutical drugs, right? It's an external, like ecstasy or, something that makes your body basically mimics the release that we're talking about, that biochemical release. It mimics the biochemical release that happens when you have sensory pleasure, emotional pleasure, and orgasmic pleasure. And so, yeah, that's what a chemically induced pleasure moment would be.
I love it. So I love that kind of wrapping up those sensory pleasures. I do have the pleasures, the 4 pleasures, not just the sensory pleasure. What I'd like to talk about is maybe some tools for sustainability of these pleasures that we can have more of. But I'd like to go to break first. And when we come back, if you can share a little bit with us about how to create some sustainability with these, would be awesome. So we will be right back after this commercial break. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network.
Many of us have created a lot of limitations around sex and what we are willing to choose. What else is possible beyond what we have already seen, heard, or thought of? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual revolution, taking the taboo out of all aspects of sex, sexuality, and copulation by tuning in to the Pleasure Zone radio show with body whisperer Milica Jelenic. You'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is The Pleasure Zone with body whisperer Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, please call in the U.S. Call 815-880-8255. That's TALK. Or Canada, 613-800-8736. Or you can Skype us at Inspired Choices Network. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email at milicajelenic.com. Now back to the program.
Welcome back, sweet pleasure seekers. I know none of you have gone anywhere. You're all like, twiddling your fingers or, twiddling yourself, just waiting to hear how do we sustain these things? Twiddling yourself is great. We appreciate it. So, Gaia, what are some ways that, maybe some tips and tools for people to create some sustainability with the 4 pleasures, like sensory pleasure? What's a way that we can create some sustainability of having and continuing to receive sensory pleasure in our bodies?
There's 2 ways actually that I usually start people off with, and the first one is making a commitment to yourself that you're going to be an ethical pleasure seeker. And I do this every morning. I wake up and I say yes, and I choose to be an ethical pleasure seeker. I say yes to all the pleasure possibilities today. And what that does is it starts my mind, and it starts me thinking, how can I find different ways that I can experience pleasure? So your brain now starts to seek it out because it's become kind of like part of your kind of contract that you set and your intention for the day. So that's kind of the first one. It's a really good way of just starting your day with like, okay, this is what my intention is for today. The second one around especially sensory pleasure is setting 3 alarms on your phone throughout the day. And I call these like sensory pleasure moments. And what it does is when the alarm goes off, you pick one of the 5 senses and you drop into that sense and you really fully engage in it anywhere from 5 to 30 seconds. And what this does, it starts to exercise your neural pathways, and it starts to exercise and strengthen your skill sets to finding how can I seek more pleasure in my day. And it awakens senses so that they become, instead of them being dull or asleep or non-existent, they're now more awake. So you start to, those are the two ways in which, starting that process. On an emotional pleasure level, to learn to sustain that and to kind of start to explore that, you have to, there's two things. One, you have to give yourself permission to be happy and to find joy and allow yourself that is your default, that is your choice that you're going to make each day. Yes. Because as a culture, we tend to move in that we support being in that suffering and that misery. Mm-hmm. And so we can have all these pleasurable, emotional pleasure moments that we ignore because we are so focused on how the day is going like shit and the weather is raining out and, the person at Tim Hortons got my coffee wrong. And we spend all this energy in focusing on all of the miserable and suffering and how we can stay basically crabby all day and crotchety all day. And so until you start that mind shift of saying, no, that is not the choice that I'm making. I'm going to choose the pleasure, the emotional pleasure, and the pleasure possibilities of happiness and joy and celebration in my day. Then once you start to make that shift, then you can start to seek them out. Just like the sensory pleasure, you can then start to seek out, okay, how can I make this a pleasurable emotional experience right now? Because we can also find pleasure in emotional pain and emotional suffering. Mm-hmm. So an example of that would be, so if I'm feeling uncomfortable, that's how I like to explain the things that, are teachable moments, right? So these teachable moments that make me uncomfortable is an opportunity for me to have personal growth and development. And I get turned on by personal growth and development. So for me, I can be like, wow, this is a sexy moment. I am choosing to find pleasure in the fact that this is an opportunity for me to grow and learn and, basically up-level my sense of enlightenment and my growth as who I am in the world. So I think on an emotional level, you really have to make a conscious choice to switch out of the suffering to the pleasure.
I love that. It's so true. I know that our producer tonight, she's a dear friend of mine, often laughs at me about how I can turn what looks like something really miserable into, to me, sometimes what looks like misery to some people just is hilarious to me. Uh-huh. I can literally laugh about it. I just think it's hilarious. She's like, how do you just see that? I'm like, I don't know. It's just so funny. How do you not see the freaking hilarity in that? But I find for me a lot of pleasure comes from just laughing about, sometimes we're just ridiculous beings, and sometimes there's ridiculousness around. And we sometimes take it personal and we get mad or we get hurt. And, yeah, when we start to kind of see how ridiculous we are, I think we can also get into some more pleasure, wow, we're just woo, that was silly. Let's choose something different. But choice is so key, really. I love that you're mentioning that. I talk a lot about choice on this show, and to me, it's number one. If you haven't chosen it, then what you going to do? You got to choose it first. If you're going through a grocery store and you were hoping to get orange juice and you walk out without it, it's because you didn't pick it up and choose it. You just have to choose it, right? So
well, and I was just going to say, I love what you said about the laughing part, because laughter is part of, when we laugh, we actually release the same biochemicals in our bodies that when we have orgasms and when we have sensory pleasure, when we have emotional pleasure. So that's an easy way to shift out of that place of misery and suffering, is to drop into seeing how ridiculous it is and laughing hysterically at ourselves. And our bodies are mimicking exactly what we're talking about here.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, so let's see. Sustainability of, so orgasmic pleasure.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
All right, let's talk about that, baby. So orgasmic pleasure is where we really can surrender and allow the building of sensory and emotional pleasure to build and build and build until we're so overwhelmed with those pleasure experiences that we have no other choice to explode with an orgasmic release.
I just freaking love your description. It's awesome. Just allow sensory and emotional pleasure to build and build and build until you explode. I love that when you talk about orgasms, there's always an explosion involved. It's like the intensity is volcanic. Come on, go higher. Go to a bigger volcano. You can do this.
Totally.
I love that. I actually watched, randomly I get to watch some of your lives, and I remember you did one, it must have been a few months ago, and you were talking about, people always trying to have sex with you or offering sex to you, and you're like, I'm not opposed to sex, I'm choosing sex that's going to explode my world. And I'm like, yes, I get that. That's it. So,
yeah, like if it's not epic, and for me, explosion is a part of epic. So if it's not explosive and it's not epic, then I'm not really interested in it, really. In general, in life.
So fun. And I think, that's another one where you can just get really conscious and you can ask, is this going to be epic? Your body will know. Your body's freaking smart. It's going to be epic.
Exactly.
And it's oh, crap. If I would gauge it as if I do have an energetic penis, FYI.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure we all do. We just haven't all brought them to the surface. But I gauge it as an erection, and if it's super high, super hard erection, then I know that's a yes. And if it's droopy, it's wah, okay, well that's just not turned on by it. It's not going to be epic. If it's drooping, I'm not going to be epic. If it's stellar and it could slap you in the face, then I know it's going to be epic.
If I can hang my towel off of it, then I know I'm in.
Yeah, do those strengthening towel exercises. Yeah, this is going to be good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so fun.
So from an orgasmic perspective, though, it's, again, the key words is not the explosive part. The key words are surrendering and allowing.
Yes.
Not forcing, controlling, or making.
Absolutely.
And that is where, I know, right? And that is where so many people get trapped in this concept that the goal is orgasm, even in anything, in sex, in sexual relationships, never mind just in life. It's all goal-oriented in this place of orgasm. And you have it wrong. It's not, the goal isn't orgasm. The byproduct is orgasm. The goal is pleasure, and when you have enough of it, well, we erupt like a giant epic volcano, and we ejaculate all over the place with orgasmic bliss.
And those are the technical terms that they write about in manuals. That's exactly what it is. We're so scientific on this show.
I know. It's awesome.
Right? And and I'm looking at the one of chemically induced pleasure. Now, I don't know if that's one that we want to sustain or if that's the chemically induced natural chemicals that we'd like to induce, which seem like, to me, when you're talking about the other three pleasures, is when you've started to play with those chemically induced pleasures that are natural chemicals will be present. So we don't have to have, we don't have to induce them by bringing in other chemicals into our body, like ingesting drugs or something, because our bodies are already formulating that in a way.
Oh, I agree. And I only put that fourth one because it's one that people tend to lean into as a way to avoid doing all the work that you need to do so that you can do, have full body orgasms and all the things that we just talked about. And so I mention it only because that is something that exists and people do, but I don't recommend that that's the course that you choose, or that because it can have long-term disadvantages, short-term and long-term disadvantages to it, and that your body can't then produce. It's not sustainable, and you're interfering in your own body's ability to create those biochemicals that we just talked about by putting these fake chemicals into our bodies, right? So I only mention it because it's part of how people move with pleasure, but it's not something that I really say, hey, let's go about doing that. There's so many better ways that we can actually naturally create those chemicals in our bodies.
For sure. So we actually are scheduled for another break, but I have a little question for you before we go to that, is when we look at the pleasures, and we're talking about pleasure to profit today, if we can tap into that with your four pleasures and looking at how the four pleasures lead to profit when we come back from break would be a lot of fun. So you're listening to the Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Many of us have created a lot of limitations around sex and what we are willing to choose. What else is possible beyond what we have already seen, heard, or thought of? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual revolution, taking the taboo out of all aspects of sex, sexuality, and copulation by tuning in to the Pleasure Zone radio show with body whisperer Milica Jelenic. You'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
What would you say if I told you that you could change your life in only 1 hour and all while lying down relaxing? Thousands of people all over the world have. What am I talking about? It's called Access Consciousness, the bars. The bars is an energetic body process that contains 32 different points on your head that when run assist you in releasing decisions about any area of your life that you have made solid and as a result cannot change. The bars is the first class in Access Consciousness, a dynamic set of tools and information designed to transform any area of your life. When you have a bar session, the worst that can happen is you feel like you had a fantastic massage. The best thing that can happen is your whole life could change. Go to accessconsciousness.com today to find a facilitator to schedule a private session or to find a bars class in your area. Are you willing to give yourself an hour to change your life?
This is the Pleasure Zone with body whisperer Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, please call in the U.S. Call 815-880-8255. That's TALK. Or Canada 613-800-8736. Or you can Skype us at Inspired Choices Network. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email at milicajelenic.com. Now back to the program.
Welcome back to the Pleasure Zone, sweet pleasure seekers. I know you're sticking around because this is an amazing topic, and really, who wouldn't want to know how pleasure leads to profit, and who wouldn't want to know how to have more pleasure? And Gaia's given us some awesome, simple tools to have sustainable pleasure in our lives. What a crazy concept. And now I'm so looking forward to hearing, wow, tell me more about how pleasure leads to profit. And maybe, let's look at it from the perspective of hey, if you have emotional pleasure, how does that lead to profit?
So, yes, pleasure leads to profit. So when we drop into sensory pleasure, for example, what this does is it starts to teach us how to be more mindful and more present. And when we're more mindful and more present, what it does is it starts to help to build our problem-solving skills. It helps us foresee problems, which what that does is supports our bottom line, because now we can course correct much quicker. It isn't going to cost us as much money, and our operations start to come down. Our operation costs come down significantly. That's one of the benefits of just working in sensory pleasure. One of the highlights of emotional pleasure is, well, you're happier. And the happier you are, the more joyful you are, the more people are drawn to you. People are attracted to you. So you get more clients, you have more customers, all of your staff like you, so that means that they show up for work, and so that's saving you a lot of money. So these are some of the ways in which, when we move into that emotional pleasure and the benefits that can happen on a logistical business side. And then when we move into orgasmic pleasure, we are now talking about the frequency of orgasmic pleasure is creation energy. Mm-hmm. Think about it this way. Everything is created in this world, this dimension, through mating of some sort, some kind of humping, right? So
yeah,
that's sexual energy.
Totally. I did an entire episode about that.
Yeah.
We wouldn't exist.
So,
the universe wouldn't exist without sex. If you guys can go
back
on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we switch into, and we're in the frequency of creation energy, what happens is that we can create more programs. We can develop more things. And when we develop and create from the place of orgasmic possibilities, what ends up happening is that everybody wants what you have. They don't even know why they want it, but they want it because you created it from an orgasmic place, because you were in that frequency. So often I use and I teach about vibrating panties, because vibrating panties is a great way in which you can make activities and tasks in your business that you normally don't like. Like for me, how I introduced vibrating panties into my life was because I had to write a bunch of contracts, and I hate contract writing. And I'm like, how can I make this more pleasurable? I'm like, let's throw in some vibrating panties. I wrote the best contract I've ever written in my life.
I think that's freaking brilliant. Are your vibrating panties created by using like a bullet in your panties, like you put it into like the gusset, or are there actual vibrating panties that I don't know about?
There's both. You can do both. You can actually buy vibrating panties.
That is freaking cool.
At the sex toy stores, right? And there's different kinds of.
I can't believe I've missed this.
I know, it's like life with vibrating panties it's like a game changer. Like every activity that you don't like doing, you throw on a pair of vibrating panties, it's all good now.
Vacuuming and vibrating panties. My whole house is going to be freaking ridiculously spotless. It's going to be crazy. I love it.
So yeah, you can buy them. Or you can also buy a bullet, and then you can put it into your panties, or you can just put it into where, for all the ladies, you can put them in to where your labia are and set it so that it's not too intense. So this is the trick, though. When you're using and harnessing, especially if we're talking about creating and using vibrating panties as a way to kind of keep you in that really like orgasmic space, but you don't want to be so much pleasure that you're actually going to have an orgasm, because when you're having an orgasm, your brain turns off. So you want your brain to still be functioning. So the key is to almost edging. So you allow yourself to be on the edge of like, wow, this just feels tingly. I just feel delightful. It's like foreplay. You're just enjoying the foreplay. You're not actually building to actually having the orgasm. After you're done your task, then you can whack off and go actually have your full-on orgasm.
I love it. I know that through. So I'm actually like a rep for one of the sex toys companies out there, and I haven't seen the vibrating panties per se, but they do have this like it looks kind of like a maxi pad liner and has wings, so you can attach it to your panties. So that's, I have seen that, but I like the idea of just the panties doing it for you. So this is like very cool. That is so fun because for one, I can't believe I didn't think of that before. It's just freaking brilliant. I like everybody on the show is like, wow, that's crazy. Milica has something she hasn't tried before. Yes, I haven't tried that yet.
Woohoo!
Wow, I've got something new to play with. It's such a great tool. You know what? I'm just going to give you loads of credit and be like, my friend Gaia says, put on those panties because she knows what she's talking about. Everybody's life's going to change. Even men could get vibrating panties. Like, everybody's life's going to change. It's going to be great.
Yeah. So I want to take a little moment to talk about for the guys, right? Mm-hmm. So instead of just kind of setting it in your panties, you can put it in your underwear, and I would tuck it underneath your testicles, and so that it can rest under your testicles. And the underwear that you're wearing, make sure they're not boxers. Otherwise it's going to fall out, that they'll keep it in place while you're going about enjoying your business meetings, your whatever that you have going on that you weren't having a good time before. Now you're having a great time experiencing this now tingly orgasmic possibilities.
Brilliant. So basically, like for the guys around the perineum area, you mean?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, right.
Amazing.
Right in the perineum.
And it might slip into your anus, and that's okay too. So
exactly. It's all good. All right. So, what was I going to say now? So that's one way in which you can use orgasmic pleasure or into that place of creation energy, which then can create one more joy, tasks that you hate. You now are in this frequency of creation. People will sign that contract and be like, this is the best contract I've ever signed. They won't even know why. It's because you were wearing your vibrating panties when you created it. And then the other one is allowing yourself, before you make major business decisions, to actually go have an orgasm, and actually allow yourself to have an orgasm and then come into your decision making, because you're now in the frequency of creation. You've just had this orgasmic experience, so everything is in that frequency. So the decisions you're going to make, the things that you're going to choose for your business, are going to move from a different place than that frantic, frenzied energy that typically happens when we go into business mode.
I love that. I love it because that is one of the things that I do practice when I'm in creation mode, or if I have something that I would like to maybe like change about my business or something, and I'll consider, like, for example, what would be more pleasurable in my business, different hours, or increase my rates or something. But I love to actually just masturbate to the new ideas and just bring that energy into my body. And to me, it's like the orgasmic energy then just flows out. It's kind of like when, people talk about manifesting. I feel like my body just does that through, like conscious masturbation for creation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's really fun. I like the meetings is awesome, and then like just changing the whole frequency and vibration of your body when you're feeling like, oh, this is drudgery, I don't want to do this. So the newsletters for Inspired Choices, I write a lot of them, and they're going to be really freaking awesome after this, because they can sometimes be like, oh, okay, here we go, we're just fitting some stuff in here. But they're just, I think we're going to have like a lot more people, and we're doing newsletters live, the live news newsletters, and Christine and I and one of the other producers will be talking on those, and I think we can all wear vibrating panties, and that will create, it's going to be live on video, so that will actually create some interest, I think, Christine, just mentioning that, because you're producing right now. It's going to do it totally different. People are not going to know what happened to the network.
And it's incredible also to go after, like, as a celebratory thing too, because it helps to reinforce new patterns and new things. So if you've done a task and before you move into the next task, having an orgasmic release will also be it's like a reset that you have, that happens throughout your day. And it keeps you in the frequency of pleasure so that you're always at a low-grade pleasure to being able to have orgasmic pleasure.
I love that. It would be really sweet if offices just had like a little room where people could go and take care of business. I know that once in a while, and I worked in an office, I would just like wait for the people to leave the office and just take care of business, because I could get through my day better if I actually could just masturbate randomly during the day. Everybody else took cigarette breaks. I'm like, can I just have a masturbation break? And I don't need to tell you people about it. This is just what I need.
Yeah. I support that.
That's chemically induced, right? Because cigarettes are part of the chemically induced too. Yeah. Masturbation's maybe easier on your health. Maybe.
It is.
Yeah. I was actually saying that to one of my clients who was trying to stop smoking. I said, well, what if every time you went to go grab a cigarette, you grab yourself instead? She just was like busting a gut laughing. I think she's actually been off cigarettes for 2 weeks now. So I'm like, yay.
Nice.
I never know.
That's awesome. Sex magic.
Oh, yeah. I love that. So I'm so excited that all these things can, be such an invitation to having greater profit in your life. And you break it down in such an easy way that this is like achievable for anybody who is alive. If you're alive, you can do this. This is not like something that you have to go, to a training and be, have some transmissions of energy shot through your body so you can actually do this. You can do this. You have a body. Guess what? You can do this. And Gaia, do you actually have programs where if people would like regular training and to be on track with you, to have you do you actually have like a pleasure to profit classes that you're doing right now? Or is that coming
I
in
do.
Yeah.
No, I do. Actually, I have a pleasure Leads to Profit. It's a 7-week guided course right now that starts May 8th. And each week we kind of dive into, our money mindsets, our pleasure mindsets, our blockages around pleasure. What does it mean to be an ethical pleasure seeker? Doing no harm, how to bring that into the workplace, all of these things that need to be addressed, so that, we're not doing harm while we're, out, being little pleasure seekers and little pleasure bunnies. And so you can, come see me at Succulent Living and under Pleasure Leads to Profit. And I have a wonderful 30-minute gift, and then you can kind of sign up for that. On my landing page, and then it leads you into, you get 6 juicy emails from me, like how to make your vibrating panties and all sorts of cool stuff. And then there's an opportunity for you to, if you really enjoy and want to dive deeper into this and really become that, what we're talking about, that ethical pleasure seeker, and making profit and moving in the world in this way that we talked about, then come join my course, because it'll help you move you through that process and help to heal any blockages that come up. Because let's be honest, this isn't rocket science in the sense that I broke it down, we talked about it, we could all be pleasure seeking, but we aren't, and there's a reason why. So, for a lot of us, there's stuff that's there that needs to be healed and released and let go of and reprogrammed so that we can now make new choices. We talk about choices, but if you are stuck in the old choices and the old choices are running the show, there's no way that you can step into this new concept, because your mind will not let you do that. It will come up with all sorts of really great excuses why you can't have this pleasure moment in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Our minds are amazing calculating tools, and they'll often calculate us out of having something greater, more pleasure, more fun, all of it. So I think that's awesome. And I think, too, having somebody that's like you're facilitating people and coaching them, I think there's such a gift in having somebody coach you through that, so that, You know what? When you have that, you actually feel like, for me, when I have that, I feel like accountable. Like, I'm going to do this because I've got somebody looking at me. Like, for me, it actually makes me have a better chance of accomplishing it. Yes, I can take all of these tools that you've given me, but my greater chance of having results with it is to actually have the coaching. I'm going to check that out actually on your website. So that's really, really cool. And yes, even me, who talks about pleasure every day, there's always more ways to receive it. So if you're listening to and you're like, yeah, I've been there, done that, I'm like, well, maybe, but what if this is something completely different? So check with yourself, check with your bodies, check with your businesses. I know you're creating so much now and in the future. And we have about 4 minutes left, and I'd like to just give that time to you to let everybody know about your upcoming. You've got the Pleasure to Profit, but you've got a lot of other things you're creating, and I'd love for them to hear about all the stuff that you're offering.
Yeah, oh, that'd be great. So I've really moved into, so you can always work one-on-one with me. That's always available, coaching. But I've really stepped into creating safe space for group coaching and group courses. And so right now I have 9 online courses that have been launched already. We have Tantra for One, we have Relationship Deep Dive, we have 30 Days to Your Epic Orgasms, we have Sexual Wellness Upgrade, Spanking 101, Navigating Ethical Non-Monogamy, and I'm in the process, and there's courses, because I'm always in this orgasmic place, I'm always creating, and so I create courses, there's nobody's business, and so I'm always creating new ways in which we can dive into exploring, expanding, learning, growing, healing. And I'm loving the online courses because it gives this group experience for people. There's accountability partners when you do a guided course with me. It's really important to understand, I only run the course guided. After that, it turns to a self-study course. So if you really but I really want Gaia in the course, that when you got it on, when I say, okay, the course is being launched this time, I only run it once. And then you have to go to self-study and one-on-one time to get that special time with me. So
fair enough, yeah. I think that's amazing. I love what you're creating, and I'm just so grateful that you took the time out to be with us today. And I'm looking forward to playing with you this summer at a nudist resort near you.
Yes.
Just like so fun. Like, I've never met you in person, so why not meet you when we're naked playing with clay, right? Like, that's
I know. I know. So yeah, that's the thing, is that when I'm not creating and I'm not doing, as working in the world of, holistic sexual wellness specialist, I'm frolicking, and I'm a nudist, and so I'm frolicking naked outside, especially now that it's getting warm. And I've set up my pottery studio out at the nudist resort. So yeah, you're gonna come and we're gonna do some naked pottery, and we'll make some, clay penises, and who else? Probably some vaginas, I imagine. And we'll have a lot of fun. And anybody who's listening, if you're interested in coming and frolicking with us on our pottery weekend.
Yeah,
reach out.
We'll put it out there on Facebook for sure, or at least to the people that I feel would be fun to have there, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for you. So we got about 15 seconds left. I just want to say thank you, everybody, for listening today, and for Gaia's awesomeness, and for being magic in the world, and for being a sister seeker in pleasure. It's so awesome to hear everybody in the world, to me, that are creating pleasure. So thanks so much.
Thank you for choosing to listen to The Pleasure Zone. Milica Jelenic will return next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to your body.